Go ahead and pull that one in close. Let's go ahead and get started here.
This one?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah, just like within like fist distance here.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, Fuji. You're shooting on Fuji.
Yeah. So I still have Canon, all the Canon stuff, and that's what I use professionally, commercially, portrait, stuff like that. This is my like everyday EDC type little guy that I just is everywhere. And always liked the tactile feel, and they look like the old film cameras and everything, and just got totally uninspired by using the old DSLRs. Like, they haven't changed in so long, and then everything's going mirrorless anyways, but all my lenses and all my investment is still in that platform. So we were at B&H Photo up in New York, and you just gotta buy something, like, even if it's a keychain. And so we go in there, and they're like, they had one there on sale, and I used this used little 35 millimeter lens, and crop factor it's 50 millimeter with Fuji's all crop. But once I got my hands on it, I was like, and I just wanted to use it. It's like a new toy, but at the same time, it's small, it's discreet, and it's the perfect little street machine. Yeah. It's like a poor man's Leica, It's like, it's not a Leica, but hey, and you can do some crazy stuff with it. And Fuji, being the fact they were film, so long that instead of like trying to figure out how to get rid of noise, they were like, let's just turn our noise into grain, so you can really get a little artsier with it, and you can, when you're using higher ISOs, you can make your the noise look grainy and make it look more like film, which is really cool. And then it has a lot of presets and stuff, like filter built-in film simulations that I don't use too much, but are neat on the cuff to have. When you see something happening before you're like, this is a black and white, you just flip over, and it less editing, you can really crank it out and have content. So since I got my hands on it, that's like I talked to you earlier about kind of getting burnt out and just kind of like meh lately. And I've never been like a gear oriented, like, I gotta have the new, I gotta have this, I gotta have that.
I'm the same way.
I'm real minimalistic. If I could just have one camera and never touch a strobe or anything, I would be all too happy, but it's not But anyway, got my hands on this little guy, and it's been really fun, really nice to have. And because there's so many times, like when we're out and about, like go to the bar or whatever, and you're like, I wish I had my camera, but you can't. With a Canon 5D4, it's like you got this giant luck of brick on a strap.
Yeah, because like I have that exact camera. I use it for everything that I do.
Yeah,
and it's kind of annoying because like back when I was in college, I had a little more time. I used to carry around my Canon AE4 with the roll 35 millimeter, Ilford 400 film in there at all times. Actually, what was I using? I've lost so many brain cells this past week. I blame St. Patrick's Day.
Still recovering.
Yeah. Oh, I was using Tri-X. I was using Tri-X film because I like that journalistic look it has. And I used to carry the thing around all the time. I was so annoying. I was like that classic hipster student, I was shooting film, taking it to restaurants, and it was still fun though. Right. And since then, like as my gear has gotten bulkier and as I've gotten to this awful habit of like overthinking everything that I do, it ends up paralysis by analysis, and the camera's too big, so I just don't. And like, I mean, thankfully, like phones are fun. They do fine. And
they'll do a job. Yeah.
You can tweak it around to look kind of interesting, but it's not the same. Right. So because like it's fun just like document moments. Yeah. Like there's a few people I've met over the last year that I've really been impressed by because they don't go anywhere without a camera. Right. And if you look at their Instagram, like they may only post like a hero image like once a month. Yep. But their stories are just this ongoing chronicle of just like these spontaneous moments they capture.
Of moments they capture, And I've been like that. I got to the point where I have FOMO, crippling FOMO. I've had it since I was a kid. And as a result, I'm not one to sit still. Like I can't, I feel guilty if I take time to stop and watch a doc on Netflix or a movie or a read or anything indoors. And I love rainy days for that reason. Like, okay, I can edit.
Yeah.
Because it's raining, I can't do anything anyways. But same thing comes with a camera on your person is same thing, like not wanting to carry those giant DSLRs because it's like, oh, I got the nifty 50 on there, but man, if I had my 16 to 35, you're just always, and so you just don't bring it, and you just tell yourself, I don't need it. But then you see moments. So getting this little guy I have been that person. I've been carrying it more and more with me here and there. And I take pictures every day, but whether I edit them or not, at least it's just kind of like
depends on how you feel.
It helps with the FOMO.
Yeah.
Like I'm not missing out. I did my part. I did it.
Right.
And it's always fun to go back. If on a rainy day, I'll take time to go back and look through but that it's definitely helped, and especially in street, you want a smaller platform, or I think it helps not to be so invasive, especially when shooting people.
Yeah, for sure that.
It's been nice. It's been nice to have.
Yeah, has that helped? Because we were talking a little bit earlier, about just the burnout like that you felt, and to a lesser extent I've had over the last years between COVID and our industries grinding to a halt and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Has switching gear, as having like a more flexible camera, has that helped you like kickstart some ideas, or just feel more satisfied?
It did at first.
Yeah, pull this in just a little bit closer.
It did at first. Okay. It was like having a new flashy new little thing you want to use all the time. But I think my burnout goes a little deeper than just like gear or wanting to get out and create. It's just when you do it for a living, and even Sean Murphy mentioned it in your podcast. If you do everything for the dollars, you're missing out on the creative side of things that really drives potential to get the work you want to do.
Yeah, like
the end goal is to do personal work and commercial work that is all relative and doesn't feel like anything different, that the passionate stuff you want to do. And so when you do it, we have more of a level playing field, I think, nowadays than versus 80s, 90s, where it helped to live in big cities and be close to agencies and all that. Nowadays you can kind of reach out via email, and they can look at your website and kind of get a feel. You always send out your print promos and they can feel it. But so it's helped a little bit, but I think the constant asking 50 people to get one yes with the whole Rona, with less and less people saying yes, just kind of hit a wall. And I just kind of took some time, traveled. Every airfare was super cheap. Hotels are super cheap. Part of me was like, it's unnecessary. It's a pandemic, but I just did it. I said, screw it. I'm going to take my cameras and get out in the world and see and create. So we did. And that definitely opened my eyes and realized, once you get that travel bug, it's like the more you do it, the more you want it. It's like a drug.
Oh, yeah.
You know it all too well, I know. But no, for some reason, on fire, and then boom. As soon as New Year's hit, I just hit kind of a wall. Like, kind of took a step back and away from photography, and just kind of lost focus or clarity as far as what I want and the path I want to go. Traveling all last year, and with the whole Rona and shut down everything, really made me reevaluate my path as far as like career moves, and it made me start to evaluate, what am I doing? Do I want to do it here, regionally where we live, or just got to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And when I get overwhelmed, like most people, just put your head in the sand or find a distraction.
Yeah.
And so, distractions are good. What keeping a constant back pocket in your mind with that on your mind is what I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm literally like 2 feet from gold. Like if I just keep plucking at it, I will eventually have a breakthrough. And that's kind of like what I mentioned earlier before we started talking over the mics is I'm in this transition period. I see it.
Mm-hmm.
At first, when I started, I was beating myself up over it. Like, ugh, I'm not creating. Oh, what are you doing?
Right.
But then I just started to relax, and I just feel that this for me is par for course. It's healthy. It's like I'm molting, and I feel like I'm going to bounce back stronger, clear, more concise. At least in theory,
Yeah.
hope knock on wood. But the thing is, if I'm conscious about it,
Yeah.
and it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So.
and that's something that like I've thought about a lot as well, because we were talking earlier, and that my last year has been constant change, and I take comfort in. And this might sound a little bit too like woo woo, a little too esoteric or something, but I do take comfort in the fact that you look at history, you look at biology, you look at everything in the world, like it's pretty normal for change to hurt, even when it's for the better.
Yeah.
And it's just in our like pampered American lives that we're living that we're like, well, we want the change, but we don't want to like pay the man to get the change.
Right.
And I think like our whole world pretty much is been reminded of that for the last. I mean, what month is we are like officially
We're
1 year
literally
out
a
from
1 year out.
lockdown.
Yeah.
Almost exactly.
Yeah.
And like you and I were kind of in the same boat last year, like no work, no stimmy money, like we were just hanging on with our fingernails.
Right.
But the way I've been approaching a lot of work in the last, I guess, 6 months since things gradually, we got through the first scare.
Yeah.
And then Florida reopened, and then other places started reopening a little bit as well. And since we've been kind of incrementally going back to these almost where we used to be, I've been kind of, oh God, where was I going? My brain is so awful this week.
It's all good, man. I'm there every other day.
Yeah. Gosh, I was on a roll, and that's so annoying. I hate it when I do that. Golly. Getting back to work slowly but surely.
Sure.
We got through that first surge, and golly, I hate this. I'm so
our
burnt out.
comfort level,
Here we go. Now I remember. Thank you. The more people I talk to, the more I'm like, the money's great.
Yeah.
I love it when I get paid to do a job that I care about. But more than anything at this point, I'm trying to establish myself as a survivor.
Yeah.
And like, hey, I didn't hawk all my camera gear. I can still shoot a job. I'm still here.
Right.
Like, yeah, I want to keep the lights on, but also I just want to be able to come out on the other side of all of this and say, hey, made it.
Made it stronger, better, faster than ever.
Yeah. Because like if we can get through last year, like unless the actual zombie apocalypse happens, it can't get much worse than that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Everyone, whether you're a gas station clerk or engineer, whatever your career, from one spectrum to the other, is our comfort zones were shook. And I think something as entrepreneurs, as self-employed, creatives, especially, God, you throw creative in the mix, you're just like, we have to constantly stay out of our comfort zone to kind of, so we kind of already do these things, but then when our actual true everything from finances to like, holy crap, I can't even go to fucking Walmart, right now to get what I need because they don't have it. Like just simple comforts that we took for granted were shattered and literally dangling in front of us by a thread at some point. I think if we look at that and take that, then yes, I think we will all come out stronger. It all boils down to perspective. I know so many creatives that, like you said, hawked their gear and was like, I had to go find I couldn't do it. And then others, just excelled. Like, oh, well, Domino's needs all new content that they shot last year, but with masks.
Right.
So
right.
if you look at it that way, there's a lot of opportunity. It's just the know-how and resourcefulness of getting out, finding that opportunity, which can be daunting. Mm-hmm. And that's like one aspect I referred to as by burnout. I just kind of like, it just became so daunting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that I know it's there. The opportunity is there.
Mm-hmm.
And every company, any business anywhere could benefit from new, fresh content, whether it's hospitality, product, anything. And just gotta just keep that in mind and keep pressing forward. And I think that's something we all are doing at this point, and is pressing forward with optimism.
Because we definitely all had our month of depression last April. It's like April 4. I remember that so well because that, I don't know if I told you this because I saw you not long after, but I mean, April 4, I was shooting. So there was a medical specialist clinic in town that I've been doing some headshots for, and they were opening a new location. And because of COVID, since they were medical, they were kind of ahead of everyone else. They weren't letting the public inside. They canceled their ribbon cutting event. So they staged like a quote unquote socially distanced ribbon cutting with just like the president, the chief medical, the chief doctor of that location, and a couple of board members. And they all like wingspanned out 6 feet away, had the big novelty scissors and cut the ribbon. And I just took pictures of that. And that was the same morning that I sent in a invoice for a deposit to shoot a hotel on the east coast of Florida. And I was feeling kind of good because like maybe we'll skate through this.
We'll
maybe
skate through.
And then literally that afternoon, that was when they announced shelter in place in Florida.
Yeah.
And the bars were already closed. So like St. Patrick's Day had already been kiboshed.
Yeah, it was kiboshed.
5 p.m. on St. Patrick's Day. It was such a dick move by the Capitol, but that's what happened. And so that day just went from like, maybe we'll make it, to like pure depression.
From better to worse,
just sent
quick.
the invoice.
Yeah.
I was expecting, a 4-figure deposit to be cut that week, and there it goes.
Yeah.
And that sent me into a spiral for a while because also we also had to close Long Hollow. Back when we were running that co-work space, we had to close that for a month. But my dirty secret was I didn't publicize this at the time, but I lived across the street from Long Hollow, and we had just replaced the keg at Long Hollow with some perfect clean beer. So I just would walk over there to do my own work and just fill my gym shaker bottle full of IPA every day and just sip and edit and just
make lemonade out of lemons.
I mean, I was the picture of clinical depression for about a month.
Yeah, we all were. Yeah.
But coming to the end of that, once my pants stopped fitting correctly, I realized, this isn't good. So coming out of that, I wish I could have learned that lesson a little bit sooner. Because in hindsight, you look at it, it's like, okay, so when things like this happen, we've got the opportunity to make lemonade out of lemons, but we got to be ready to do it. No one was ready to do it.
Right.
So these lessons are all like fun to think about now, but it just reminds me over and over again. Every time I talk to you or any other creative about this, it just reminds me that we have to like keep that holstered at all times now.
Absolutely.
Because we never know when we're going to have to pivot again.
Keep around in the chamber.
Yeah. At all 100%. Times, safety off.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't get too comfortable because, I mean, this rate, Godzilla could rip out of the Gulf of Mexico at this point.
Well, now you've said it. Now it's going to happen.
Knock on wood. But, shit, I mean, who knows what's next, especially in this political climate. I'm not going to go there, get off on that tangent. But bottom line is we just don't know.
Yeah.
And that was a huge eye-opener, I think, for all of us. What is it going to, what is next, and how to stay, like you said, on the ready to adapt and to rise to adversity, not to sound like a poster with a kitten on it, but that's exactly what it was. And I too, I went through, it's like the 7 stages of grief, or the stages of grief.
5 stages of grief.
Five stages. Yeah. Well, it felt like 7, it felt like 12 stages
yeah.
of grief, but it was, acceptance finally hit. Mm-hmm. And then you're just like, screw this. I'm not going to let this kill me. What can I do? Start reaching out. somebody somewhere needs a fucking photo taken. So,
Yeah.
and then you're like, wow, this is kind of an untapped resource. And that adaptability and that thinking outside of the box, I know helped me, going after gigs and potential opportunities that I never thought of. And that's when you take a step back and you realize, wow, there is a lot of work out there and there is a lot of money out there, even though it seems scarce. There's a lot of money out there, and you got to know, or not, you got to kind of think outside of the box sometimes to go after it. Or at least to say you tried, after hearing 50 people say no, or ghosting rather. That's the no nowadays. Nobody really writes you back and say no, we're good. It's mostly just a ghost. In my experience, but
same.
But you get that one, and then it just carries on to the next, and fuels your desire to create your personal stuff, and so with the whole Rona last year, we were talking about New Orleans. We mutually have a love for New Orleans. I wasn't too concerned, not to downplay the virus or, the victims and all that good stuff. But as far as travel goes, I kind of was a risk taker, and I traveled, and I mean, Omni was $50 a night, on Royal Street. So I was like, screw it, I'm going. But to see,
and you don't have to fly there either. You can just go straight from your car. It's fine.
We live so close, and my God, to see it empty, to see Jackson Square dead ass empty on a Saturday, just pigeons and one little tarot card reader with a tarp around her, was just an experience of a lifetime. As scary as that sounds, but wow, to witness it, to be able to photograph it. And that's just personal works to me. Nobody has, I don't share that stuff, but to walk through those streets empty, and then you would hear that lone horn player somewhere off, like somebody sitting in a balcony.
Jeez.
It was so magical.
Yeah.
But at the same time, scary as hell, because you're like, what? Haunting. Thank you. That's a perfect word. It was haunting, because you're just like, is this, you kept hearing that phrase, the new norm. I'm like, I'm not going to accept that. But at the same time, you're like, oof, is it? Because that city, especially, and even here on the coast, we thrive and live and breathe by our tourism dollars. And that city especially, and Frenchman is one of my favorite places to get out and about. It was hit hard. It's still buttoned up pretty good by plywood. A lot of businesses aren't coming back, are not bouncing back. And so it makes you, it's a hard pill to swallow when you see that.
Yeah.
But the ones that did and were able to make it are kind of like us. They're going to be there stronger than ever. And if they can get it through this, they're going to get it through the next, whether it be Hurricane, La Mothra, or whatever, you name it. That is definitely a city that survives. And Pensacola has also shown its ability to survive. It was a rough year for Pensacolians and all that good stuff. And I'm not a Pensacolian. I live in Navarre. But I'm over here, most of the week. So
the hometown impressed me this year too. I, having grown up here, it's kind of like if you're best friends with someone, it means you kind of roast them constantly. That's kind of how I am with Pensacola, because there's so many goofy things just to poke fun at. Yeah. And I've done that a lot with Pensacola over the years, but I was sincerely impressed this past year that that town really put its money where its mouth is, and everyone really did support each other. New Orleans did the same thing.
Absolutely.
I'm always talking about Turkey and the Wolf in New Orleans. It's like my favorite place over there. And if you look at their social presence, before the pandemic, they were just like this gleeful band of pirates, high on everything under the sun, just making elevated stoner food and doing it well. And then, I've talked with the owner there a couple of times just when I'm in there, and I could tell always that that's kind of a persona. He's actually extremely intelligent,
Yeah.
very, very tactical with how he does things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they really went public with that because all through 2020 with, you know, the pandemic and then the Black Lives Matter movement and how that affected like New Orleans especially.
Absolutely.
Like that is a great example of like entrepreneurship pivoting, because Mason Hereford and his crew just went from gleeful chefs to like very socially responsible pillars of the community, like overnight. It was so cool to watch. Yeah. And, you know, I reference that just because that's who I follow and what gets shown to me. But, I mean, that was just a microcosm of what these communities were doing along the Gulf Coast.
Wow, yeah.
And it was really cool to see because, like, Pensacola did a lot of the same thing. Like, you know, I do a lot of stuff with restaurants over here, and we were, you know, doing cohesive projects about the restaurateurs who were banding together to support each other and keep their doors open. And to my knowledge, you know, very few places have closed.
Right.
In our town.
We got lucky. In our town,
yeah.
I wouldn't say lucky, but yeah, we fared pretty well. And as a whole, I think New Orleans pulled together, persevered. You know, not just restaurant, bars especially. Bartenders, you just all pulled together, and you know, and I get what you're saying. You grow up with somebody, you talk shit about them, and God, I talk enough shit about this area. I have a love-hate with all things Gulf Coast, and that just chalk that up to just being here too damn long. But once again, this whole Rona thing, you're like, I can't wait to get out of here. I just got to go. But you go to these places. I had to go to New York City, and then I went to Washington and Oregon.
And I didn't realize you went to the Northwest.
Yeah, I went to Pacific Northwest and even, you know, Tennessee in certain areas. But to come back here and realize, holy shit, we have it so good as far as like politics, as far as, you know, like everywhere you go, it's like wear your mask or get out, or can't go in here. Everything's closed, shut down, et cetera, et cetera. But you come back to Florida, it's like you look at like you're the redheaded stepchild if you wear a mask at this, you know, whatever. So someone that's not too stoked about wearing masks all the time, I fell in love with that. I was like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a time and place for it. I get that. But it did. It made me realize how good we do have it. And it was just a major shift in perspective.
Yeah.
In so many aspects of my life and living and all of it. It was just a massive shift in perspective. And I'm one of those people. I grew up very negative. Not to, you know, my parents are amazing, but they learned it from their parents. You know, we all learn it from our parents. Yeah. But I've always been looked at everything kind of a negative aspect. And so self-work and all that stuff has been transpiring in my life for the past several years. But I was pat myself on the back. But this year I handled it pretty well. Like you said, I went through the first couple weeks of like, run to Richie's, get that bottle of Jim Beam on sale, that handle before it fucking closes down, because that's where I'm going to be, you know, for a couple weeks. But then you shake yourself out of it, like, no, the show must go on. Uh-huh. And so it was a major shift, and traveling, seeing the world in this chaotic state was refreshing to come back home and realize, wow, we do have it pretty good as far as all that goes. And I think that's been kind of a calming point, you know. It relieves anxiety. Like I'm always like this FOMO, like I referred to is like I'm missing out. I need to be there. I need to be elsewhere. But then you get to take a step back and breathe some air. You know, just it's not that bad. We got it pretty good. It could be worse. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole could be worse thing, but it's never more true than ever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, also having like grown up here and like, as you say, possibly been here too long, you know, I came to the conclusion this year that like this is a good place to be if, like us, we have very flexible lifestyles, you know, with what we do and how we do it. Like we can go pretty much anywhere and possibly get hired to go anywhere to do it for money.
Yeah.
And I've always said that, you know, the time that I went to that I finished school and everything, everyone I knew was just like getting out as fast as they can. Let's go.
Get out of here.
And
black hole.
And I had trouble getting out, so I ended up here probably a year longer than I intended.
Sure.
But that was the year that all the new money came into the city, and there was a lot of new development downtown, more stuff to do. And I was like, oh yeah, things are getting pretty good. I'll hang out for a while. And now coming out on the other side of the pandemic, and that was 8 years ago that I was talking about that, and now on the other side of the pandemic, I'm like, this is not a bad place to be if you can leave, but it's also a pretty good place to be if you can't leave.
Right.
Because if you got to be locked down somewhere, this ain't bad. Not right now.
Wasn't bad.
I mean, even if you know our state wasn't as permissive as it is, it's still a calming place to be, and I've never appreciated that more than I have this past year. Absolutely. A lot of people, you know, were scratching their heads, I'm sure, even verbally talking a little some shit with me because, you know, I had my daughter the whole 6 months, which was also a blessing because she lives in the Pacific Northwest with her mom. And so I only get her for the summers, and that was another huge blessing in disguise. Like, wow, Washington, Seattle, Tacoma is such a mess. Let's get her down here. Mm-hmm. But instead of sitting indoors, we were outdoors every day. But where I live in Navarre, it's super close to the Eglin Reservation, and there's so many creeks and swimming holes, and you go there every day for a year and not see the same place twice.
So that's what we did, and it just made me realize how much more yet again, wow, this isn't a bad place. I get island sick because I've seen everything. I feel like at times I'm on a little island, and I've just seen it all. I know every little palm frond, every stone. But with the lockdown, I was just like, wow, I feel really blessed to be able to get out and do this, instead of, you know, sitting indoors and people are on Facebook and stuff. What's a good I've watched everything on Netflix. I'm like, yeah, the beaches were closed, which that was a bum deal for everybody. But my God, you know, look outside your house. I mean, Blackwater River. Not that I want a ton of people to start going to these places, but
no, it's not lost on me that you don't geotag a lot of your nature shots.
Right. That's definitely a double-edged sword, isn't it? Especially when you're getting paid to do it. Like Visit Florida comes out, oh, we want you to, this place is awesome, we want to do a spot on it. I'm like, I kind of need that money, but I don't want to tell people where this is. But you know, and people write me on, like, Instagram's my biggest social media platform that I use the most, versus Facebook or Twitter, all that stuff. That's just happens to be mine. And I get a lot of people write me privately or even in the comments like, you asshole, why are you telling people where this is? And, you know, it makes you mad because, motherfucker, I grew here, you flew here, shut up kind of deal. But in the position you're in, you got to grin and bear it sometimes, because I'm right there with them. I'm like, look, man, it's not it's not to tell everybody, hey, come to this swimming hole that can only handle 10 people. But it is a thing. And starting out, when I first started, the conservation type stuff, that's when I started photography and got into the underwater aspect, and then realized I'm going to go broke if I just focus on conservation, because there's zero money in it. And that you don't do that stuff to get rich. You do it for the love of the environment and all that stuff. But I slowly realized I needed to branch out to make money if I wanted to do this in the capacity I am doing. But I've originally started a group with some like-minded guys throughout the state. And it was kind of cool because I was here in the Northwest. Another guy was over near Tallahassee and South Florida, and then Central Florida, and we started this group called Spring Hunters. So it was a Facebook group, and the group originally was dedicated to literally mapping every single spring, private, hidden, well-known, from Jenny to Potter Spring, all the hidden, every spring in the state, map it for this big geographical map, and we did so. We accomplished it, and the Springs Institute took that data and took it one step further and made this big interactive map. And we got up to like 20,000 followers, but then it just became that. It became one big forum, like, what's the best spring I can drink a beer at? What's the best spring I can bring my dog to? What's the best spring I can take my friends to? And so I stepped back, and I think all of us collectively kind of were just over it at that point, because we ran this massive machine. Got up to, I think, even 50. And it's still a page. It's still a thing. I've just taken. I'm not involved in it anymore. And at first you're like, wow, look at what you just want to tell the world, because there's so many people that you would interact with, be like, I would never see this if you didn't take a picture of it. Whether it be like or you would get these older folks be like, I used to swim here in the 60s, and my God, has it changed? And they would send you pictures, or they would relive those moments. And then it became, on a geotag level, as something you would do. But then I slowly realized, after visiting a lot of springs, traveling the state, just seeing them trampled, literally, the onslaught of visitors, they see the mud, the trash, and you realize, shit, I'm part of the problem. And so you take a massive step back, and you get selfish. You don't want those people there. You don't want them kicking up the bottom with their fins. You don't want them you just don't want them there. It's like, just give me carte blanche. I can but
because I wanted to ask you about the free diving and how you started that, just for people who didn't know, but also, like, you're way better at it than I am. Like, I'm scuba certified and have been since I was 13, but I'm in no way like very proficient in any of that.
Sure.
But there's a certain amount of etiquette that when you're brought up to it,
absolutely,
you're like, hey, if you kick up the bottom, no one else gets to have a good day.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
Some people never hear that.
Right.
Then they go, and then they wonder why it's not what they want it to be.
Right.
And that's got
100%.
That's got to be maddening.
It's maddening, and that goes along with the whole rubbernecker. Driving through Destin, like, oh, I stayed at that condo 2 years ago. Oh, it's that kind of mentality. It's my time to be here. I don't care how my presence affects you. You bringing your dog to the spring, and or not. I love dogs. I'm a dog person, but trampling it, mudding it, destroying it by walking anywhere but the boardwalk. There's a lot of that. It's just that mindset.
Yeah.
And it's not anything. They're not a bad person. I'm sure they're very considerate when they're at home, but it's like when people leave their home, you've heard that old verbiage, like, when people leave their house, they leave their common sense at home, if they had any like tourism and stuff. And that's even more so in a water environment. People just think it's just one big fun time to them, or whatever, but they don't take into fact that what they're swimming in is ancient, especially springs. I'm talking springs, to be clear. Ancient, extremely fragile waterways, and that water, is vital to us. It's the lifeblood of essentially. So it is very frustrating to see, and that's why I do not go to major springs anymore, unless it's in the winter or a weekday. I do not go to any springs on a Saturday or Sunday. I can't see them trampled. Yeah. It's like seeing something you love just shit on. And I get it. People work during the week and they want to go have a good time. That's great. But there's ways to do it sustainably. But, I've never been any place remote where a beer can hasn't made it there first. You find these beer cans from the old pop tops from like the 60s, 70s. Is that aspect, there is no away, there's no throwaway. It's there. It's just going to lodge itself somewhere and sit there forever. And that's a huge problem. You get spring breakers do it the same thing. It's the same mentality. Come down to the beach and, oh, this place is awesome. And they just throw their trash around. Same mentality.
Were you one of the people reposting when that frat was on Pensacola Beach a couple weeks ago?
No.
So a whole bunch of like the Pensacola Beach guys were just lighting them up, like tagging this frat, tagging their school. Because this group had just been so public about like, oh, we're like the frat that like prepares the next generation of gentlemen or whatever. And it's like
Yeah.
a whole bunch of guys that all look like they're named Chad, and they're all wearing the same pastel
Chad,
shorts.
Kyle, and Brett.
Yeah, Chad,
Yeah.
Chad, no relation, Chad.
Right,
you know,
right.
that sort of thing. And they were like just doing this self-congratulatory circle jerk thing of like, oh, we're the gentlemen, and they left like more trash than anyone's left on the beach in years.
Makes you sick.
And you know, it's that level of not just a lack of respect, but a complete lack of self-awareness. Because like I've been doing hotel photography for about
Been doing it a minute.
4 years now.
Okay.
And when I first got started, it took me so long to get used to getting up at 5 a.m. so I could be out of my room with my gear at 5:30 to shoot the breakfast buffet, which I would always, you know, have notes with the staff saying, okay, we need to get this done because the people who come to this hotel are going to be awake, and even though breakfast doesn't start till 6, they're going to start coming over here looking through the glass in the sneeze guard at 5:47, trying to get their cereal. Because, you know, a lot of these people, you know, just because they're on vacation, their body clocks don't stop.
Right.
So they're still up early. You know, you got Pensacola Beach especially is kind of like the working person's beach. You know, it's not Miami Beach. It's not filled up with people who like sleep in on Saturdays. A lot of people who come here are people who work real jobs.
They want every minute to count.
And they may be up at 5 a.m. every day at home. They're going to do the same thing on vacation.
Yeah.
And they're down there early. And that I get, but then there was like a level beyond that where I have seen so much carnage at Holiday Inn Resort breakfast buffets. I can't even fathom how people flip the switch of when they go someplace that's not home.
And that's okay.
And it just becomes Lord of the Flies in front of scrambled eggs. It's horrifying because like the parents are just kind of like smiling while their kids are just leaving scorched earth trails,
Jesus
and
Christ,
it's hard to watch.
Yeah,
and like, and that's in a hotel.
Insight into hospitality photography, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, don't do it. It's horrifying. You will hate your fellow man.
Right.
But it's just, and that's in a hotel with 4 walls, a roof, and a staff to clean it up. So when you see that extend outside into something that is truly like, you know, I'm going to sound woo-woo for a second, but like when I go to a spring and I get there early, that's transcendental for me because I'm seeing a glimpse of what this world used to look like before we started fucking it up.
Right.
And like I just walking in there, I don't even need to like think about it. I just have this innate sense of reverence and wanting to be nice to it.
Right.
And then, you know, if I get there at 7:30 by 8:14, like the whole world's there with their lawn chairs and their 6-packs, and it just becomes like scar tissue, and it's so hard to look at.
Scar tissue is a good.
It's hard to fathom sometimes, and I don't know, I didn't want to think that George Carlin was always so right about human behavior.
Very insightful that George Carlin.
You know, so the world went to hell right after he died. It's like he was holding it together.
Yeah. I mean, no shit.
Yeah.
And that is a driving force in my work is documented photography. Is you can see just in 5 years of different springs that I have photographed on the regular, the deterioration that you can see from not just the plants and the surrounding area around it, but even water quality. You can tell it's a little hazier each time, or there's a little bit more algae, and that's par for course unless we do some drastic major changes in all that, from infrastructure design to septic tank disposal, everything. But that's a whole other podcast. But it's to document these things because it comes to a place where many people wouldn't see it or want to protect it unless they're shown it through photography or video and stuff like that. But do stills mostly. But yeah, it does make you cringe, and eventually you get to the point where you don't want to share it with anybody. My Instagram feed's a big indicator of that. It was all blue to a point, and now it's other stuff, and I'm losing people because that's what they come to see. That's what they want to see. But
it's almost like you're chronicling like a picture of human civilization. Like it's blue, and a dirty city.
It's just turning brown. It's getting brown. it's really sad. And to think that these were revered and sacred places, with the Native Americans and, Wakula, they found the mastodon bones down in the... Wakula is a prime example, one of the largest springs in the entire world. And when I was a kid, it was blue. I mean, that's where they, like in the 50s, they filmed Black Lagoon, the creature of Black Lagoon, and you can even see in that movie, black and white, how clear it was. And
that movie still holds up. It is,
and it's still
amazing.
Clear. I mean, you can see 100 feet viz, but it's green. It's like pea soup, and the whole bottom is just pure algae, where it used to be nice manatee grass and flowing. And still a great place, cool place, but it's never gonna be the what it was, and that's like a wonder of the world. I mean, just massive prehistoric under blue portal. Now it's just green, and that's what awaits all of the springs, unless something is done. So I definitely take it to heart, and it always stings when somebody writes me and is like, "You asshole, you're geotagging this place. I found out about it last weekend," but it is what it is when you're doing a story on it.
Well, the nice thing about Florida Springs, I don't mean to cut you off,
sure,
but the nice thing is a lot of them are hard to get to.
Yeah.
So even if you tag it, a lot of people aren't going to want to
won't put in the effort. This is true. But one of the best springs around here is Boop Springs, and you have to take a boat to it. And it's only accessible by boat, and that spring is now it's become like a redneck crab island. So yes and no. Talking about, yeah, and I've seen pontoon boats. Now there's anchor marks on the bottom of the spring. Little shits have swam to the bottom and wrote their name in the limestone with scraping rocks or pocket knives, and so there's names graffiti on it. And just recently, I did a story with Panama City Living for the drawdown event at Merritt's Mill Pond, and they draw down the water, so a lot of underwater caves are accessible. And I was so fucking pissed to finally make it and get into this cave, which I've only ever been in, holding my breath or with gear.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because that was pretty cool, because your article just dropped yesterday about that, right?
Well, it dropped like a week or two ago.
Oh, I saw.
I'm just getting around to sharing it.
Gotcha.
But I was like, I should probably share that just for shits and giggles. But sure enough, had to Photoshop somebody's name, and I swear to God, it was LS. Somebody had the gall to go into that beautiful, like magical, whimsical fairyland of a place and write, "Go Tigers, LSU," something name. Literally scrape it in the limestone with a rock. I couldn't even make it up, like, what the fuck? Oh my God. And sure enough, I tried to buff it out.
That, and I'm like, we deserve a second wave.
Right? Bring on COVID 21. No, I'm just kidding.
Easy there, killer.
Sorry guys. But It does. It makes you just disdain that mentality behind it, because you can't relate to it. You're like, what are people, like you said, how do they flip the switch? How do they even... Yeah. What is their perspective and comprehension of life? But
in the history of things that are okay, what makes you think that's one of the things that can be okay? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And you get there and you're blown away. So that was a thing. Really cool experience though, to, like I said, just to be in those caves, and the fact that it only happens every 10 years, the county drains the pond.
And let's contextualize this a little bit.
Sure.
So every 10 years, just explain this cave. Because I read your article, but not everyone else
does. Merritt's Mill Pond is one of Florida's best kept secrets.
Yeah.
Here I am talking about it. But it's... The head of it is Jackson Blue, which is a Mag 1, once one of the biggest springs in the world, next to Wakula. And it pumps out literally millions and millions of gallons a day. So all that water
has between 60 and 70 million gallons a day.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. So that's fresh aquifer water. That's water that we're drinking. That's water that Nestle is allowed to take without paying and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I digress. The whole pond is that water, and that pond goes to a flue system and empties into what's called Spring Creek, which is an incredible place if you ever get a chance, which in conjunction follows into the Chipola River, which is yet another amazing place. It's one of the few places in Florida where you can literally grate your hand on the bottom and pull up shark's teeth and pottery. Lots native peoples were just so densely populated within the area. There's so many hidden mounds and so many places we haven't even found that they built in their livelihood around the Chipola River system. Wow. Incredible place. But at the head of it is Jackson Blue and Merritt's Mill Pond. But within Merritt's Mill Pond Basin is several other springs: Indian Wash Tub, Shangri-La, Twin Caves, Hole in the Wall, which Hole in the Wall is what the article is mostly about because that's the biggest cave you can just literally paddle into and stand in. But any other time of year in the decade, they're underwater. So it's a huge spot for cave divers. I don't condone any free diving in an overhead environment. I've done it. I've done it plenty. I've almost met the next life doing it. I know there's a lot of YouTubers that are doing it, and as a result, state parks are even talking about banning free diving in. So I don't want that to happen. So please, if you're listening, don't free dive in overhead environments. It's literally like rock climbing. It's like free climbing, solo climbing. Climbing rock face without a rope. Anyway,
buyer beware to the extreme.
All those caves are pretty much accessible. You can just swim into them, snorkel into them. And Hole in the Wall, you can literally kayak or stand-up paddleboard into it. And it's just the water's still at the bottom, so you light it up with some lights, and it's just, no Photoshop necessary. There are no saturation levels, anything. It's just pure blue aquamarine with smooth, baby ass smooth limestone, because all those pebbles and rocks and shark's teeth are always getting spit, and it just makes the bore basically just super smooth. So that itself is neat to see. It's just all these different rock formations and different nooks and crannies, and you can get lost in there so easily. But it's only down, the water level is only down for a few weeks. So it's good that it's not like that all the time, or there'd be more LSU graffiti. Yeah. For all I know. Nothing against LSU guys, but
well, this is why Tom Segura made fun of the whole state. Because Tigers fans keep doing stuff like this.
Keep doing shit.
But I love Louisiana, but just saying. Good
gumbo. But yeah, so it was a neat experience. The article came out a little late, but the experience nonetheless was awesome because I spent a lot of time. I've worked with Jackson County Tourist Development. I actually worked on them with the 12-month project, building them a digital library of content that they could use. They are a very small county, and so they don't get those big tourism dollars, and that is their driving force. Tourism is Merritt's Mill, the Springs, and, of course, the Florida Caverns State Park, which is amazing. But they were wiped out in the middle of the project. Funding was already secured, so we had to go through with it, but it was really challenging because that was right in the middle when Michael hit. Michael hit due south of there at Mexico Beach and went due north and leveled. They lost like 75% of their trees. Yeah. It was like a god just took a giant lawnmower. The trees went up about 20 feet and just level. It was so weird to see that perfect like level of such a huge area. And then Florida Caverns, some of the caverns caved in because the trees on top fell, uprooting, causing a lot of the caverns to fall.
Because limestone's already soft, so you disrupt those. The root systems. I hadn't even thought of that.
So it was a mess, and everybody's lost their homes or their business. So here I am with Visit Florida in conjunction with Jackson County. Trying to find the good in all of this and trying to go take headshots of these people that literally have been sleeping in their car, So that was pretty interesting because it was to be in that environment as a photographer to document it all, but also to find the human spirit and the way the community banded together, kind of like what we saw here locally and in New Orleans during the pandemic.
Right.
It was really uplifting to see that happen, especially such a small area that doesn't get a ton of visitors.
It's a perverse privilege that we have when there's a tragedy, because
Right.
we are prepared to document it in a way that not many people are.
Right.
But at the same time, you feel horrible doing it sometimes.
You do. You try to detach yourself from behind the lens, and whether it happens there through your viewfinder or you're sitting at your computer later that evening, it just hits you. You're like, you can see the pain behind their eyes, when and you just feel it at the end of the day. It catches up with you, but that's part of it. You want to document because it goes back to that whole thing. One of my driving forces is I would have never seen this had you not taken a picture of it.
Yeah.
So it's just something we do. And that visitor's guide just finally came out years later with some new content, but it was a neat project. But that area, to see it drained of its water, because I've spent so much time in the pond diving those and photographing those springs, to see them dry and be able to walk into them, it was cool. So next time it happens, by all means, I'll give you a heads up. Like, it's happening.
Please do. I will drop everything to do that, because I mean, that's one of those things where of course I would bring a camera, but I would also be very tempted not to.
Just to live in the moment, soak it in.
Just to sit there, because I joke constantly that I need like 7 to 9 glass elements between me and the world to like know what to do with myself when I'm looking at things.
No shit.
But I'm trying to like make an effort, because this is kind of a tangent, but I've realized in the last 6 to 8 months or so, I have so many people I know, some of whom are full-time photographers, some of whom aren't. But my friends who do wedding photography, they work 2 days a week out of the house. The rest of the time they're at their office or home office editing. Mm-hmm. They have a pretty, like the ones who do it right, they have a pretty chilled out relationship with their work. Other people I know are like part-time photographers, and they're very, very good, but they have another job they work.
Sure.
And when I talk to them, sometimes they want to talk about photography, they want to talk about gear or whatever. And it's hard for me to do that, because I'm just like, I don't refer to myself as an artist. I'm more of a technician, or I even say I'm a tradesman in a lot of ways. Sure. Because, occasionally I get like the really cool commercial job where I can really stretch creatively, bring in extra gear, bring in extra people, and really, flex some creative muscle. But other times it's very process driven. Like the hotel photography, it looks cool when you see the finished product, but it's very repetitive days, very repetitive processes.
Yeah, a lot of folks do not know what it entails. So
no, and the editing is grueling. That's worse than the production days. Because at least the production days, like you leave and go get lunch. Editing days, you're just in the house all day. You see my stool over there. Like I'm sutured to it most of the time. Right. And I say all that to say,
perfect ass print.
Yeah, check it out on your way out. But I say all that to say, when I go out, like other people come in, have a cocktail, and I'll be like, yeah, so I'm looking at this gear, looking at this. It's the last thing I want to talk about.
Right.
Because I'm like, I just
don't.
I've done this for 100 hours this week. Yeah. I'm just trying to drink an old fashioned and have a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's a weird line to walk, because like you love it, but at the same time you need a break from it.
Absolutely.
Other people, it's purely like a hobby or a part-time passion, and they want to talk about it all the time. I'm like, your relief is talking about it. My relief is not talking about it. So we do the same thing, but it feels totally different. It's really hard to reconcile sometimes.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'm the same. There's days where I don't even want to look at a camera, see a camera. I just don't. I don't want to do it. And I went through a process when I first started. It affected my family life. My daughter would be like, "You always have a camera with you." So I had to like learn a balance.
Yeah.
And even now when I go dive, I always make a point to be in the moment. It's easy to say you're in the moment behind the lens, because in a sense you are, but everything else is tuned out.
Yeah.
You were literally in that moment to create and capture that moment. But when I go dive, say we visit a spring for a day, or I go out to the artificial reefs or whatever, I always make a point to do a couple dives, literally put the camera away and just live in the moment and not have a camera. And those are always my times. And I mentioned distractions earlier, kind of getting burnt out and finding distractions is I gravitate towards things like riding a motorcycle or surfing or free diving, because they demand 100% of your attention. You don't have time to think about anything else. And it's like my mind craves that.
Yeah.
Because other time, in our profession, our trade, we're always so consumed about composition and lighting and the moment, getting it right. And it can wear and tear on us over time. A lot of people that's just me, but other creators be like, what the hell are you talking about, nerd?
Yeah.
You're ridiculous. But that's just me personally. I have times where I don't want to talk about it. I don't even, I do weddings too, and there's times where I don't even pull the SD cards out of the camera. I just leave it in the box with salt spray and beat sand all over it, and I don't fucking care now. And it's not because the wedding went bad or it was stressful. It's taxing.
Yeah. And
like when you're intro extra, I can be extroverted and yuck it up, but it's draining. And weddings are those are draining, where you have to be on constantly. It's draining.
I had the same experience. So a couple weeks ago, I got hired through an agency to shoot an entire new set of menu photographs for a national restaurant franchise, which was a really cool job to get. I haven't had a job like that in a long time,
not awesome.
Since COVID. It was really cool. I mean, it was very formal. Like, it was not like, the people were great. I had a lot of fun doing it, but the shots themselves were not super fun or interesting. They were just like very clean editorial shots of their food. And I had forgotten how like psychologically draining it can be, how physically draining it can be, because I hadn't worked with a big crew in a while. And I was kind of, I'm not going to say misled, but I was not given the full picture of what I'd be doing coming into this one. So I was under the impression I was doing a photographic, kind of a supplementary photographic element to a video shoot. And then I walk in for pre-pro the day before, and they say, oh, yeah, so this is basically a photo shoot with a video component. I realize, like, I'm going to be, like, on all day.
Right.
And even though there's, like, a creative director, so it's not like I'm exercising a lot of creative control.
Sure.
I'm going to be on deck more than anyone else.
Right.
And it's fine. I mean, I came prepared. I did the job. But I was so, like, not psyched up for that.
Right.
And I'd forgotten how,
caught
like,
you off guard a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like doing a wedding or anything else. Like, when you just spend like 8 or 9 hours doing this thing, like, no, it's not construction, it's not manual labor. There's a lot of people who work physically a lot harder, but the amount of mental attention you have to give it, the amount of like emotional intelligence you have to keep up to work with a big team. Because this is how unprepared I was. Like, I thought I'm just going to slide in, take some pictures. Instead, I found myself at close quarters with a producer, a creative director, a camera assistant, a grip, a gaffer, and 4 food stylists.
Oh, shit, that's daunting.
So, yeah.
Can be daunting. Like, if you're not mentally prepared for that, that can...
Yeah, and they were all amazing. Like, I have no complaints whatsoever about any of the people. They were great. But just the amount of, like, mental attention it requires and the amount of just... You know, there wasn't a lot of grin and bear it moments. Honestly, all things considered, it went very smoothly.
Right.
But we encountered a lot of like technical issues with the food itself. You know, so the stylist was pulling her hair a few times because she was like, "How? I'm trying to make a 20-piece chicken basket look good here. Have you ever tried to arrange 20 pieces of chicken?" So she's just like calming down the producers and saying, "Give me a minute," you know?
Right.
And
wow.
So
where was this?
It was so the franchise is, the owners live in Shalimar. because they bought the restaurant, but they want to like live near the beach, so they're down this way, and they actually rented out space at the Okaloosa Walton Convention Center.
Wow!
So we had like
That's killer.
We had like a big conference room.
Yeah.
That we just brought all the gear into, staged the lights, just left the set hot every day. Came in, flipped on the lights, locked in the tripods, and just kept shooting,
Boom, boom,
shooting.
boom, boom, boom.
And we did the convention center because they had a full commercial kitchen close by, so they could prep all the food. The stylist had like an entire half of the room where they were just like with eyedroppers and tweezers making the food look good.
That's wild.
It was cool. It was the first.
So much involved. People just do not non-creatives, non-photographers.
Oh yeah.
Have no idea.
And honestly, most people don't need to think about it because for most people, it's just I enjoy this food. It looks good. I'll order that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fun for us because we get to kind of like peer behind the curtain and be part of like the nuts and bolts of what makes these things run. And that's honestly one of the things I find most fulfilling about doing commercial photography is that when you get these opportunities, you get like a better understanding of like how like the economy works,
how the world works in a essentially, yeah.
Because I'll show you the group shot when we're done here. That shoot employed like 25 people for 4 days, like to photograph fried chicken and do video of it, but you never realize how much does go into it. And could they have leaned it out and done it cheaper with fewer people? Probably so. Yeah. But at the same time, when you're trying to like do the best possible with with a company that big that can afford it, it creates jobs and it's really cool. Right. And a lot of people never think that far into it, and they shouldn't have to, but it's there for people who want to dig into it, and it's pretty freaking cool. Yeah.
Pretty amazing what can be accomplished when you put enough powerful minds together for one, common goal. It's wild. It getting into that side of thing. I thought that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And that's all part of it. When you think you want something, be careful what you ask for. Yeah. And to be honest, during the Rona, I had a lot of these, maybe nothing that involved, but more commercial stuff booked. But then taking a step back from it, it made me realize it's not necessarily what I want to be doing. It's like I want my cake and I want to eat it too. It's to find that work that doesn't feel like work, and that's part of this journey too, is just finding it and finding what you want to do and what you want to go after and how to put that work in front of the people that matter, and to tell what it boils down for me is to tell meaningful stories. And so once again, like I said, I'm just in that weird transition period of I'm doing what you did earlier. I had something and then I forgot it. Oh yeah. But it was going along the lines of that production. But anyway, I digress. It's and
that's where, and to piggyback on what you said about telling stories, I've said this to a few different people lately, and I'm going to say it here and really put it on the record with you, is that, how long have you been doing photography? Picked up a camera first time?
6 years ago. Well, talking about my GoPros and all that, 7 years totally. Okay. Professionally, 5 years.
All right, so you've seen the gear get better and better. Right. You've seen the cameras get more and more intuitive. Sure. The algorithms that do the focus get faster and faster.
Yeah, it's insane.
So, but you also remember when it used to be harder and there was a bigger barrier to entry. Right. So now everyone's got a camera. Everyone has the technology. Mm-hmm. You can get a Sony A7 III and shoot a wedding tomorrow for like less than $2,000. Right.
Get that Best Buy card, bro.
Yeah.
It's leveled the playing field.
Right. But here's the thing. Yeah. What separates photographers from true creators, true professionals, to be a professional, you have to treat people right business-wise. That's right. Given. But now it's like, who can tell a story? Mm-hmm. Because everyone's got the technology. Everyone can take a pretty image. You've got, with this weird economy we have on the internet, you can have a 20-year-old girl take a selfie. Yeah. And more people will see it than will ever see anything I will ever do.
TikTok.
God, don't get me started.
Yeah.
But there's that. But now it's like for us in the professional thing, it's like who can tell a story? And it's like hearing you talk about conservation, hearing you talk about the springs, you know them.
Mm-hmm.
Like their fingerprints are on you as much as you're on them. And you care and you tell people about that. And like with me, I try to do that with restaurants and food because like
Right.
I really like to get to know the people that make things and try to like say, okay, so they believe that, like I did that podcast with Alex McPhail. The first time I ever met Alex, one of the first things out of his mouth when I asked him about his approach to food, he said food is a weapon. I thought that was the coolest way of summing up his whole philosophy. And that became the title of our podcast because I wanted to come back to
Food is a weapon, yeah.
And I've met other people who bring a very specific outlook to their food. So
Sure.
for me, like I've tried to lean into restaurants because that's where there's so many cool stories. And you pull those stories literally out of the earth in the stuff you do in the springs and in nature. And that's what gives me hope for you and me and other people we know is that like we care. We're not just doing it for the likes. We are trying to find the truth and the stories and find, you know, something that will lift people up a little bit by seeing it.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a captured image or a written word, we're trying to bring something, you know, and that gives me a little bit of hope because I know you and I know a few other people who still approach it that way, and
absolutely
that's like a light.
I couldn't say that better or put that any better.
I've been walking around the house muttering a lot lately. I've had some practice.
Hit that nail on the head. Absolutely. And that's what we have to move forward is hope that we'll all be here tomorrow and can continue this journey we're on, whether whatever we're doing, you know. Absolutely.
And we've been going for a little over an hour now, so I feel like this is probably a suitable place to sign off. I don't want to take up your whole night.
No, you're good, man. All right. My girlfriend's dragging me bowling, so this is always fun.
It sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, as long as the booze are cold and I'll make it work.
Well, people sleep on bowling alleys. It's like the last place where you can get like an $8 pitcher of really cold beer and have yourself a good night.
Yeah, and they're divey, which I dig.
Yeah,
I like the divey, grungy side of things. Yeah. So bowling alley should be fun.
Yeah,
but yeah, man, thanks for having me. It was it's always good to talk to you and hear your perspectives and catch up with you, see how things are going, especially after the craziness of everything that's happened to everyone last year. But always good catching up with you, bro.
Likewise, man. And I think my chaos is winding down, so let's try to do this more often.
Hell yeah.
Cool, dude.
Deal.
Thanks, man.
Be humble. Be grateful. 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 Be humble.